Dick Miralles is currently 98 years old. In World War II, he served as a gunner on the SBD Dauntless dive bomber in the Pacific Theater. Now, he is the last surviving member of Air Group 11. And today, not only will we relive Dick's harrowing tales in the skies over Guadalcanal, but we will also get to follow him as he tries to add one more entry into his logbook and finally fly again in his SBD Dauntless for the first time in 79 years. It is 1942. The United States has just been thrust into the greatest conflict in history after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Empire of Japan has been aggressively expanding their reach all across the Pacific, and now, after climbing back to his feet, Uncle Sam must find a way to bring them to a halt. In order to do this, though, the United States will need brave men to go into battle. Fortunately, after December 7th of 1941, the American people came together and enlistments skyrocketed as young men from across the nation signed up to go to war. One of these men would be Dick Miralles. Dick would end up in the U.S. Navy, where he would be assigned to their new dive bomber, the SBD Dauntless. Not as a pilot though, but as a radio man and gunner. A crucial high-intensity assignment that was not for the faint of heart. Not only would this position involve operating the radio and defending the 6 o'clock position from enemy fighters, but it also meant that you would be at the mercy of your pilot during intense bombing runs, in a near vertical dive at the Earth, all while facing backwards. It was a job that many of our generation would refuse to do today. But in 1942, with the world at war, Dick jumped at the opportunity. And today, thanks to the Commemorative Air Force Airbase Georgia, he will get the chance to do it one more time, adding a final entry into his logbook. But before he could hop in the aircraft, we would have to get suited up and attend the briefing. While we head there, however, let's pick back up with our story. The 17-year-old Dick Miralles, who had actually left high school early to join the service, would be assigned to Air Group 11, which saw him transferred to the South Pacific, where he would be taking part in the American attempt to halt the Japanese advance in the Solomon Islands. Specifically, Dick and his unit were supposed to be replacing the bombers on board the USS Hornet, the same aircraft carrier that had famously launched Jimmy Doolittle and the B-25s that struck Tokyo earlier that year. But unfortunately, fate would have other plans, because almost at precisely the time that Dick and the other Green Airmen arrived in the Pacific, the perils of war would come for the Hornet. This would occur on the 26th of October of 1942, when a coordinated strike from Japanese Val dive bombers and Kate torpedo bombers dealt critical damage to the American carrier. She would shortly thereafter come to a halt and began to take on water. By the end of the day, the USS Hornet was abandoned and would come to rest at the bottom of the Pacific. Following this, Dick Miralles and his unit would have nowhere to go, as there were no other carriers that they could be stationed on. So instead, Air Group 11 was assigned to become a land-based unit, stationed on none other than Henderson Field on Guadalcanal. From here, for the foreseeable future, they would be responsible for taking the fight to the enemy, striking both land and naval targets that were vital to the Japanese war effort. Here, Dick began his tour and got his first taste of combat. Fortunately, we have access to Dick's journal that he kept while he was overseas, and using this, we can actually walk through his story step by step. We can see that on April 29th of 1943, Dick Miralles and his group went on their first combat mission, a raid in which they were baptized by fire and saw heavy anti-aircraft defenses light up the sky around them. As we look to the next entry, apparently after just one mission, the stresses of war were already wearing heavy on Dick, as he apparently thought the month of March was coming up next. But once he got the date cleared up as the 1st of May, he writes that the boys of Scouting Group 11, which had now become Bombing Group 21, attacked a Japanese camp located on the hills of Guadalcanal. As we turn the pages, we can see similar raids continued over the next few days. But on May 16th, something interesting happened. During a raid to strike Munda, Dick writes that their bomb actually failed to release from their SBD. He told us a little bit more about this mission in person.
We went on a raid to Munda, and we went down into our dive, and the bomb didn't release. So we flew back up later to join up with the skipper, and all the airplanes just went like that. And the skipper came on and says, "Your bomb is teetering on the bottom of your airplane." We didn't have any idea what it was going to do, you know, whether it would go up and hit and so forth. So the skipper told us, "You guys can bail out because that's too dangerous." So Hogue, he says, "Nope," he said, "I'm going to fly this thing back. We need the airplanes, and maybe we can get it back in." So he says, "But you can bail out." So I looked down, there was about 25 sharks in the water, and we were in enemy territory, and I thought, well, I don't think I'll go, because I didn't want to dive. I heard so many stories about people that got their legs chopped off with bailing out of the airplane. I wasn't exactly anxious to do that, so I said, "I'll go with you." So we came into the landing. He made a beautiful landing. And they'd cleared the tower and everything around us. Came in, going down the runway, and we didn't want to put the brakes on because that might do it. We didn't have any idea whether it was armed or not. We're going down the runway, and I get my parachute off, I get everything off, I'm ready to go. And so as it slows down, I said 10 miles an hour, but it wasn't 10, it was probably much less than that, about 5. I jumped out onto the wing and slid off and started running. I look up and the pilot's 80 feet in front of me. And how he got out of there, and I'll never know.
2 weeks later, on May 28th, we see that on a raid that involved TBF Avengers as well as SBDs, Air Group 11 tried to strike targets on Munda again. But on this date, Dick would have to write a more somber entry into his journal, as they lost 2 aircraft and 1 man on this raid. As saddening as this was, the war would go on, and Dick and the men had to keep their focus on the mission ahead. Following this entry, for nearly a week all would be quiet. But then, on June 5th, you can see that there is an entry unlike any of the others. On this date, the events that Dick would experience would be so extraordinary and surreal that it would require that he use the spaces of 9 days worth of entries to retell the happenings of this single sortie. Now, I could simply try to retell this story from his journal, but I believe there is a better option. Let's hear this one straight from someone who was actually there, Dick Miralles.
In 1943, I was serving as a aerial gunner and radioman in an SBD in Air Group 11 on Guadalcanal. And it was decided on June the 5th that we would go to Bougainville area and make the first daylight raid to be made on the island.
On June 5th, 1943, Air Group 11, along with Australian and New Zealand forces, were getting ready for a large strike. There was a handful of SBD Dauntlesses, TBF Avengers, somewhere about 32 Corsairs joined up, and about 24 P-40 Warhawks.
We got up in the morning and we got in the plane, and when we started the engine up, the engine caught on fire. So we had to get out, and the pilot and I looked around for another plane. We had to find one. So we found one and got in and took off because we didn't want to be left behind. We made the commanding officer who was leading the flight was a commander, was flying a TBF. And he told us, our skipper, to take his 2 wingmen and follow him. So as he bailed over, as we turned over on the dive, the guns broke loose from the mount. I was hanging on to them, and I didn't want to let go because I was afraid to take the tail off. So it pulled me up out of the plane, and I'm kicking with my feet as fast as I could and as hard as I could. And I finally got my toes under the top rings, and I was about 2/3 of the way out of the airplane. So we're in the dive. As we're going down, a plane went by us, which was a pilot named Beck, and Henderson was his aerial gunner. And their flaps were not open, and dive flaps. And if CSBD, if you got it going so fast, a certain speed, you couldn't pull it out of the dive.
Dick was in the back, and he saw his other wingmen, and when they got into that strike, they must have got hit. The pilot must have got hit because the plane just went down, no dive flaps. So that's the only thing that would make sense. And he saw him go right into the water.
Beck and Henderson went by and crashed into the water. Now, I never knew whether or not he had been shot, the pilot had gone down, or whether he was trying to get away from the Japanese. There was about 20 Zeros above us fighting our people. He could have been running away from that, I don't know. So we went on down, we made a drop on a destroyer, and as we pulled out of the dive, it didn't sound the engine didn't sound like it was exactly right. I stuck my head out to look, and I got a gob of oil on my face. So I knew then that we had been hit. The nearest island, away from the main island of Japan, Bougainville, was Sunset Island. And we went over there, but it was a small island. It was Japanese held, and we knew we'd be captured, so we were still moving. So we said, well, let's go on down to Kalamangara, which is a older, bigger island, and had a coast watcher, which was one that helped people, aviators that went down. And so we were still moving, so we thought, well, we'll keep going. So we went on down a little farther, and 2 Japanese Zeros jumped us.
So as Dick pulled his guns out, they started jamming because the ammunition got whipped around in the wind, jammed it all up. So he only got 5 shots off. Meanwhile, he has a Zero coming after him. So he looked around in his canopy and pulled whatever was out and just started throwing it, hoping it would, I don't know, maybe hit the propeller. And
when my guns were jammed and wouldn't work, I had to have something to do because there's the planes firing at me. So I grabbed our radio coils, which were about, weighed about 2 or 3 pounds or something. And I'd throw them at them. And I don't know why I did it, but I had to have something to do, so fight back. And I thought maybe I'd get lucky and hit a pilot. So it didn't work. So these 2 planes, they would wave their wings, and then they'd come down and shot a bunch of holes through the tail. And then they'd go up the other side and wave their wings and come back down again. And then they went back up the other side, and I looked up and I saw 2 F-4U fighters, Marine fighter planes. And so I went on the radio and called them and told them we needed help. So they came over, and when they did, the Japanese turned and ran, flew away. And so we went on down, and we ended up at the Russell Islands, and we landed at the Russell Islands. That evening, we went up to the chow hall to eat with the the people, the Marines, and we looked up the two guys that had been in the F4U. We talked to them, and one of them had 50 rounds of ammunition left. The other one was clear out, and the Japanese ran away. So we all were very, very lucky.
When Dick got back to Guadalcanal, they dropped him off in a PBY, and when he got back to the base, all his stuff had been divvied out because they thought he'd been shot down. So he went chasing to get all his money and clothes back.
When we got in Guadalcanal, we had a sort of a code between us that if anything happened to anybody, that we could take all of their things that they had and divide them up among whoever wanted what. And so it took me quite a while to gather up all my stuff. It was scattered out over. Everybody had took what they wanted, and then I didn't have anything left. And that was the end of the story.
Following the June 5th raid on Bougainville and Dick's return back to base, they were given a new SBD and resumed action with their group. His journal wouldn't have another entry for a couple of weeks, so while we turn the page to his next story, let's check in on Dick at Airbase, Georgia, as he gets briefed for his reunion with the SBD.
You ready to go?
Anytime.
Well, here's your logbook. I already checked the airplane over. She's ready to go.
Okay.
Here's all our current notices to airmen. I checked all those, so we are good there. There's no issues. And here's our current weather report. Right now it's clear skies, calm winds, temperatures 21 degrees Celsius. It's going to remain forecasted such like for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Looks like we lucked out. We got some good weather for you guys.
That's great.
And the first thing I asked you is there any maneuvers you would like to see?
Well, let's think. I wouldn't mind going into a dive, but I don't know.
I can't go into a complete dive, but I can do a dive entry. So we will do a dive entry.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
That sounds good?
Yeah.
So-
Just let me know ahead of time so I can turn my seat around.
Well, your seat's going to be backwards the whole time.
Oh, it is.
You'll be ready to go backwards unless you want to spin around or you can sit
No
backwards.
problem. No.
Okay, great. And some of the maneuvers I thought we would do is we'd just start out with some shallow turns like you did on the airline coming in.
Yeah.
And then I'll tighten it up right to what you were used to. Okay, we'll go 60 degrees left, 60 degrees right.
Okay.
We'll see how that feels.
Yeah.
You want to put some G's on, feel like a young man, you tell me.
No.
No?
No, I don't think I need any G's.
So that's what we'll do. And then the next maneuver we'll do a wing over. So that's just a nose up, start a roll. We'll come up like this,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back down the other side.
Okay.
That'll kind of get you all set up for your dive. Okay. So we'll do that left and we'll do that right. We'll do a nice couple steep shallow turns like that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get set up for your break, for your dive. Now what I'll do is I'll pick a target off to the left and I'll kind of roll over, put the nose down. We'll go into not quite 60 to 70 degrees, but we'll go into a fairly steep dive for about 3 or 4 seconds and then we'll pull off. Okay?
Good.
Anytime you feel uncomfortable in any of these maneuvers, go ahead and tell me I don't feel comfortable. We'll go straight and level. And if you don't feel good and you want to get sick, that's fine. Go right ahead.
Yeah.
All right?
Well, I shouldn't, but
You damn well
you never
shouldn't.
know.
You know you shouldn't. So that'll be good. Then the last thing we'll do when we come back is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a carrier break. Now I know you know what that is. So here's your aircraft carrier. And as we come over, we're going to come over the runway at about 1,000 feet. We're going to go into a tight turn. And in that turn, I'm going to drop the landing gear. And then as we come around to the runway, I'm going to drop the flaps. I'm going to do our landing checklist. I'm going to check that you're okay. And then we're going to come in and we're going to land. Just like we would do on the carrier. Okay?
Yeah.
And then we'll taxi off, we'll come back, and you'll be a hero again.
At least I hope I'll be alive.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll have him
Is
sign
that a comment on my flying abilities, Dick?
No.
and you'll have him
It's my
sign
age.
the logbook. He's going to update your logbook
We'll
for
do
you.
that after your flight.
Okay, cool.
So that's what we're going to do. And there's one last item I would like you to do for me. This book right here is very important to me. I want it to fly. but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And in 5th grade, I read that book, and I said from that point on, I'm going to be a naval aviator.
Oh, yeah.
That's why the SPD is important to me, and why guys like you are important to me.
Yeah.
And what I'd really like you to do is if you would sign that book
Okay.
right here,
Right here.
so that you are forever in my life as one of my SPD crewmen.
Okay.
Looks good.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Let's go fly, Dick.
Okay, good.
While Dick heads back to the hangar, let's pick back up with our story on June 19th of 1943. On this date, Dick and the rest of Bombing Group 21 would set out to strike Japanese shipping. They were unable to find any, however, and would come back home empty-handed. 7 days later, on the 26th, we can see that the SPDs would head out again, this time to strike an airfield on Munda. Here, Dick's aircraft would land a good hit at the airfield, and he even writes that he got some strafing in. This was an often forgotten role of the SPD radio man and gunner. Many often think that these airmen were only firing at enemy aircraft from behind, but in reality, they were also tasked with shooting at targets on the ground as they were pulling out of these bombing runs. And this is exactly what he would do on this day. As we turn the page again, it becomes apparent that Dick was becoming a skilled gunner in the SPD, because on his next mission on July 6th, they would strike another airfield, and in this one, they were taking heavy anti-aircraft fire before and during their dive. As they pulled out of the bombing run though, Dick would fire away with his guns from the back seat, aiming right at a Japanese anti-aircraft emplacement. His bullets would find home because immediately after his burst, its guns stopped firing. Dick had successfully put the position out of commission. A few days later, after missing a mission due to poor weather, they would bomb Munda once again, this time writing that the ground troops were starting to push in on the Japanese in the area. In the next week, Dick would participate in 2 more missions, including one more where their bomb failed to release, before an interesting one on the 23rd of July. This would be another raid to Bougainville, the same area that he saw his most intense mission the month before. On this sortie, his pilot, a young man by the name of Hogue, would spot an 18,000-ton Japanese transport ship in the waters below. They would dive, landing a direct hit on the vessel, which was reported to be carrying between 5,000 and 10,000 Japanese troops. And after yet another successful raid on Munda the very next day, Dick writes that the American troops on the ground are now in close enough range to shell the airfield, showing that the efforts of Air Group 11 are paying off. And finally, on July 27th, Dick Miralles would make his final combat entry. This would be one last bombing raid to Munda, where he would write that the American troops were nearly in complete control of the area, successfully pushing the Japanese back and helping to gain a foothold in the area for the Allied forces. The next day would be Dick's 19th birthday, where he would receive one of the best gifts possible, a ticket back home. On July 29th of 1943, Dick Miralles would return back to the United States, ending his tour of duty as a member of Air Group 11 in the Battle for the Pacific. Dick's final mission in 1943 would be the last time that he would fly in an SPD Dauntless, and his last entry into his logbook. That is until today. For the first time in 79 years, Dick will get the opportunity to fly once again. And now that you know his story, it is time once again for Dick Miralles to head to his position in the backseat gunner.
Pardon?
Can I get you to sign this airplane?
Yeah, where do I sign?
Right here on the baggage door. Anywhere you like.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
There you go. Thank you.
All right.
All right, Dick, let's put the logbook here in the logbook holder. I'm sure you've done this many times before.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go do my pre-flight. I'm going to hand you off to our capable team, Yvonne and Jim Stearns, and they'll get you all lapped up. And then I'm going to drag the airplane out of the hangar for you.
Oh, good.
All right, go ahead. I'm going to get set. I'll see you on the intercom.
Yeah. Oh, let's see here. Come on, leg, get up. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
This flight I'm going to do next week is probably the pinnacle of my entire aviation career. The SBD means a lot to me. It's what the airplane that, and the story of Midway that from a very early age said, I'm going to be a naval aviator. So when I fly these airplanes a lot, I look out at the wings or I look across the nose and I say, I wonder what it was like being there at Midway, at Guadalcanal, at Santa Cruz, looking down, seeing the Japanese fleet, realizing I'm going into battle. If I could just have 1 second of what that felt like. And now I'm going to fly a guy who was actually there. So this is an opportunity that it will never come to me again. And I cannot tell you how honored I am to get to fly with a guy who was there and lived it. My only hope is that I'm as good a pilot as he deserves.
Dick Miralles is a radio man slash gunner in SBD Dauntless. And at the time, he was 18 years old. And I can only imagine being 18, going to some far off place and hopping in the back seat. And he said his only job role was to just keep them off their tail. Being able to fire back meant he could contribute. And so he was very happy to do his job. The one comfort that I could imagine was holding on to the guns. You know, and that would probably take your mind off everything, knowing that you could contribute. And I'm sure your trust in your pilot is absolute. And I'm sure your pilot is counting on you in ways that you don't imagine. And if you're only 18 years old, that's a lot of responsibility. You know, on one of his strikes, have zeros on your tail and then the guns jam up. Why am I back here? What can I do? So that's what got him motivated to rip stuff out and start throwing it. Dick's last day, when Air Group 11 was at Guadalcanal and they got the orders to head home, the combat tour was done. That next day was Dick's 19th birthday. Happy birthday. You just served your country and you can go home now. Air Group 11 had a total about 800 personnel, and from all my exhaustive research and family and friends trying to find all of them, I can confidently, pretty certainly say that Dick is the last surviving Air Group 11 veteran. And watching him go back up into Dauntless today was unreal.
That was quite a trip. Receiving. Okay. Oh, man.
You did it.
Oh, shake it.
There you go. Good job. Wow.
Oh, well, made it.
Just another day at the office.
Yeah, that wasn't bad.
I kept going. I kept saying, how you doing, Dick? Doing great. Keep going. You want to do this? That's great. Keep going. You want to do any steeper? Let's do it again. Said, you ready to do a dive, Bob? I'm ready. Let's go dive. Said, all right, you want to do it again? Oh, yeah, do it again.
That was fun. Kind of reminded me of the old days.
Yeah, do you enjoy that?
Yeah, I did.
Good.
I really did.
Well, Dick, this is your logbook. The last time you flew an SBD was in '43. And your last pilot name, as I remember, was Lieutenant J.G. Hogue.
Right.
Well, I'm Lieutenant Haig.
Yeah.
So it looks like we cleaned it up. We cleaned it all out, right?
That's great.
All right, so let's put it in here and we'll put a new date. You want a new year in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is 2022
Yep.
and it is 9/24. This is SBD 5
Yeah.
54532. Flight time was 1.0. And I understand we have to put this as a code. What was the
Well,
code?
we were thinking of special.
I think so special too.
Yeah.
So we'll call that Z. And we'll put Lieutenant Haig.
Good.
Self.
I'll be there. Hey. Hogan Hay.
There you go.
That's great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations on you.
Yeah, a little fast, a little high at the numbers, but
I bounced a few times, but not today.
okay. Well, how was the rest of the flight, did you think?
Good. I thought it was great.
Good. How was the dive bombing run? Not quite as exciting as you remember?
No, it was kind of dull.
When people say, oh, I'm on a deadline, it's like, I know what a deadline is when you have a 98-year-old waiting on you and he says he doesn't have much time. Everything else can go on hold. And getting to show them what you made with their story and give you the thumbs up that you got it right, that's all I need. Everyone else can hate the movie, but if they give me the thumbs up, I'm loving it.
If you want to make more stories like this one possible, you can actually ride in the very same SBD Dauntless as Dick Miralles and support the CAF in Airbase, Georgia by booking one of their Warbird rides. You don't even have to live in Georgia, as their aircraft travel to air shows across the country and are probably headed to an area near you. You can also ride in their P-51 Mustang, T6 Texan, or T-34 Mentor. Book the ride of a lifetime and check out Airbase Georgia and their current air show schedule at the link in the comments. Also, make sure to check out 11 the Movie, a documentary on Air Group 11 by George Miralles. And most of all, thank you to all the veterans. If you know another story like this one that I should cover, please comment it below and I'll see you next time.